Glenn and I got a really good opportunity to be parents. For those who don't know, we have a 21-year-old daughter, Mylana, who lives in Toronto. As soon as she graduated high school, she went right back to Toronto, where we moved from 9.5 years ago, and has been adulting ever since. And so yesterday she really needed to talk to us, and there was some stuff that she wanted to go through, and I have permission from her to share some of the stuff that we talked about because it was so good. I mean, the stuff that she's going through as a 21-year-old is stuff that I can still go through as a 57-year-old, and some of the themes and challenges that she's facing and navigating, they seem to be kind of universal. And so the conversation started off like in a really good and juicy way. And I approached it one way, Glenn approached it another. And I knew as soon as things started unfolding, I'm like, this is the talk tomorrow. There's like so much good stuff in here. So the thing that came up for her, or right at the beginning, was she's feeling stressed. She's having a hard time. And so she was just saying that there are things that she wished that were different. She said, if they're different, then I'm not going to be stressed anymore. And so she just was saying, this is happening at work, and this is happening with so-and-so, and this is how I'm feeling. And so I just listened, and then I applied my coaching and counseling and authentic relating skills and reflected back to her, so this is what I'm hearing, wanting to kind of like just fix it for her, but no fracking allowed, no fixing, no rescuing, no giving advice, no caretaking, no killing her experience. And so just reflected back, and she's like, yep, that's about it. And so then slowly through the conversation, we started talking about, well, what are some options? What are different perspectives? And so it was really cool because it all kind of started out with, the odds are against me. The odds of this happening are so small because. And so as I'm listening to this, I'm just going right into new thought mode and just having my perspective of what the odds are all about. But it was really interesting because almost immediately, Glenn pulled out this really, really interesting post from Scott Adams, the Dilbert creator. I know very little about him. I read a book of his. I don't even remember what it was called. Found it fascinating and entertaining. Don't agree with some of the stuff that he thought, but also think he was, really, really interesting. And so there was this post that he wrote about the odds. And it starts off with, I live my life as if the odds don't apply to me for anything related to success. And sure enough, my life unfolded as if that were true. Feels like magic, but that's probably an illusion caused by me consistently not understanding the true odds of things. Okay? So as I hear this, I'm thinking, okay, well, in order for this to apply, you gotta know where you stand with there being odds or not being odds. And where I'm going to come from tonight is from a new thought perspective. So I'm not saying this is the way it is. I'm offering a perspective on this conversation that happened yesterday that was all around the odds and probabilities. And so for me, even though this was really interesting, and I thought, well, that's really cool. I mean, he's making a conscious choice to think a certain way. And because he's thinking a certain way, it means he's acting a certain way. He's making certain choices. And that's being reflected, in his life experience. It has nothing to do with odds. It has nothing to do with probabilities. It has to do with his conscious choosing. And yet, that wasn't his experience. His experience was that if I just shift my attitude about the odds, then this is what's happening. So he goes on to write, for example, I'm not a great artist and I'm usually not the funniest person in any crowded room, so for years I incorrectly assumed I did not have the skill to be a professional cartoonist. If I had been better at calculating my odds, I would have understood that being good but not great at several complementary skills made my odds of success surprisingly good. So for me, even though this is sort of a 1 + 1 = 2 sort of situation, For me, as someone who is immersed in the world of consciousness and consciously reevaluating what it is I'm thinking, the stories I'm telling, what it is I'm believing, and the choices that I'm making, and am I making those choices consciously or unconsciously, to me, this is a very sort of like external-based reality, where whatever it is that he's experiencing out here, whatever information someone gathered about probabilities and something happening a certain way because it's happened a whole bunch of times like this before, that's what he's focusing on, and that's what he's in part basing his choices and his life experience on. And for me, and for us as a New Thought community, it's about what's in here. It's about what's in here, tuning into the love we are, into the creativity we are, knowing that there's no one and nothing that is pulling any puppet strings, that is making any decisions for us, that we are the ones that have control, that we have full agency on how we experience life. Now, does it mean that stuff doesn't happen that we wouldn't prefer, or stuff doesn't happen that feels negative? No, that stuff still happens. Life is still happening, but we get to be the ones to choose how we're going to respond, right? And that comes down to something called tendency. And so for me, the title of my talk today is, There Are No Odds. Okay, and when I saw this picture, I just thought this little kid is like a total Weisenheimer, like it just made me laugh, and so I thought, well, I'm going to put it up there so that maybe it might make you guys laugh. I don't know. What are the odds? Anyway, so information is what odds are all about. Tendency is what odds can be about, and conscious choice is what comes into play as we think about, what are these odds? Who are the people that are telling us what the odds are? Who came up with the odds? I'm not a mathematician, I'm not a statistician, but I do know that if something has happened a whole bunch of times a certain way, if we have been thinking a certain way, if we have been believing something for a long time, if we have been making the same kind of choices and taking the same kind of action steps for however long, the odds are, chances are, we're going to get more of the same of what we've already experienced. And the cool thing about knowing that we are in control of our life as an experience is to know that we can make a different choice at any time. We can make a different choice consciously at any time, and therefore have a different experience at any time. So just because there is a tendency, there are probabilities that, are available, doesn't mean it has to happen that way. And for me, this is just information. And so I get to choose what I do with this information. And so if it's something that's not working, if it's something that doesn't feel good, if it's something that doesn't feel life-affirming, then I want to choose something different. And so going back to the conversation with our daughter Mylana, she was talking about how if life were feeling great, then it would feel like money was flowing freely all the time. It would feel like money was flowing all the time. It would feel like she was successful in part of her career. It would feel like she wasn't glued to her phone all the time and that she could actually be more present for whatever it is that she was doing. And so, again, listened to everything that she was saying and reflected back, I'm hearing this, and then I'm noticing this. Are you open to a new perspective? And the answer was yes, because she wants to feel differently. I mean, sometimes we don't. Sometimes we want to wallow. Sometimes we really need to just be with those feelings for a while because they feel good. But it's kind of like a hand on the hot stove situation. You put your hand on a hot stove and there's this immediate sort of reaction of oh my gosh, that's hot, right? If you leave your hand on the hot stove, for more than a second, you're going to burn your hand, right? So you take it away. Anyway, so going back to what Mylana was saying, the whole thing that was coming up every single time was, I would feel this way. Life would feel this way if this would happen. And so what we started looking at was, well, if we take a look at the idea of money flowing freely, from a New Thought perspective, money is flowing freely all the time. Your bank account may not be evidence for that. It may not suggest that, but it doesn't mean that you can't feel like money is flowing freely anyway. Because this is a total what you focus on expands opportunity. And so if you focus on the feeling of money flowing freely, then you raise your vibration, you open yourself up to attracting opportunities and resources and experiences to feel more of that feeling of money flowing freely. And then guess what? All of a sudden, you realize, wow, there's actually money flowing freely into my life. And then that feeling builds up and amplifies even more to support more evidence being found for money flowing freely. And that's how it works. We get to choose what we focus on. And when we focus on something that is life-affirming, when we focus on something that is expansive, then that's when we get to feel and experience more of the love that we are. So for her, she started thinking, okay, yeah, I don't actually have to have money in my bank account. I can feel what it would be like if money were flowing freely right now. And then also take a look at evidence that money is flowing freely elsewhere. And then, well, what would feeling successful feel like? Well, it would feel like this, this, and this. Okay, well, you just talked about that right now with your circumstances not changing at all. So right there, you get to see you don't have to go anywhere, you don't have to do anything, nothing has to happen. You get to feel differently and then have a different experience. And then, not glued to the phone and feel like she had more freedom so that she could be more present in her experience. Everything that was happening was tying into being present for that experience, because all of a sudden she was so much more conscious of the choices that she was making, that she had the ability and the capacity to choose to feel better than she was feeling just by shifting her perspective. And then as we talked, then it was like, oh, you could call so-and-so, you talk to so-and-so, here's a resource for you over here that you haven't tapped into. It's like, oh, yeah, right, okay. Because all of a sudden she wasn't caught up in all of the negative feelings anymore. She literally was not in the back part of her brain anymore, because she had shifted to this part of her brain where there's clarity and focus and discernment rather than freaking out, which is at the back part of the brain. So what I realized as these things were coming up for me today was that this was also a really amazing opportunity to practice my authentic relating skills. And I'm talking about this because Sherry Hauser has this incredible workshop coming up on Saturday, which is totally free, but by donation, if you do want to donate something. And she is doing a 6-hour workshop on authentic relating and tying it into New Thought principles, which is going to be so cool. And there's already like 22 people or something signed up. So it's going to be really, really good. But the things that came out of yesterday just work so well with how we can change our life experience. So the first thing was, this is what I'm hearing. Okay? Just not judging or criticizing or thinking about or making labels or whatever. Just, this is what I'm hearing. And then the next one was, and this is what I'm noticing about what I'm hearing. And when I was training as a spiritual practitioner, then there were different levels of listening that we had to tune into. And one of the things that we had to tune into was, what is it that I'm thinking about as I'm hearing someone say something? And we had to get out of that mode, and we just needed to be fully present for what was being offered. And so this is what I'm noticing as much about what I'm noticing about myself as I'm noticing what's happening for the other person. And then, after the information is shared, after the feelings are offered, after, is there more? Are you open to a reframe? Because there's always, always, always an opportunity to shift perspective, the tiniest amount, and you could have a completely different experience of the exact same situation, the exact same challenge. And so are you open to a reframe? Because even if your circumstances don't change, your experience can change. And then if yes, well, let's look at it from a New Thought perspective, because every single moment, every single challenge is an opportunity to tune in, check in. How am I showing up in life? How am I creating my life experience? Am I showing up as the love I truly am? Am I showing up as the infinite potentiality of the quantum field? Am I showing up as creativity where the possibilities are infinite and boundless and limitless? Or am I showing up according to what's going on? Is my life experience being informed by all of the challenges and all of the frustrations and all of the stuff that's going on around me, that even though it's very real and requires attention, ultimately, in the grand scheme of things, all of that stuff combined together, multiplied a gazillion-fold, is so much less powerful and capable than who and what we are at our core. Because who and what we are at our core is infinite creativity, resilience, and love. And that which we are, which is the same power that is the power of the blazing sun, every twinkling star in the sky, every leaf on every tree, the cells, the opportunity to breathe with those cells that Keely was talking about just a few minutes ago, that's who we are. And we are so much bigger and more powerful and creative and capable than we can ever think. So that's what we need to focus on. That again and again and again and again until it becomes so automatic, so habitual that it doesn't matter what's going on around us, because that resilience is already so cultivated within us that we can navigate anything. It may not be easy still, but we can do it, and we know that we can do it. So in the end, I really truly believe there are no odds, because there is nothing that is random. The universe is intelligent. It is based and founded in harmony, in order, in creativity. And if there was something random, then it means that there isn't the order. And if there's something random for me, it means that there's something else, maybe making the decisions, maybe, sort of like driving the bus. And that doesn't make sense to me, because then there isn't oneness. Then there's something else. Then there's some kind of duality. So for me, there are no odds. There is choice. There is conscious choice. There is agency. There's information, there's tendency, and then we have the opportunity every single moment of every single day to decide, how am I showing up in this life? Am I showing up as who and what I truly am? Or am I going to go showing up according to what is going on around me and get caught up in this again and again and again in this loop? We're personally responsible. And so going back to the meditation quote that we had at the very, very beginning, which was inspired by the Scott Adams post, live your life as if the odds don't apply to you, and one day you'll notice that they don't. Thank you, and so it is.